So we are one race down and next race is up. So we're in back-to-back race weeks. We don't usually race back-to-back weekends, but we do in June typically, I guess, because we have 2 sprint races. So it's go from a taper week to a race to a recover/taper week back to race with another recovery on the back end. So looking forward to seeing how I do in this next race. I did pretty well in it last year, and I had some pretty ambitious goals after I finished last year's race, better than I thought. So we'll see if my fitness level matches what I hoped it would when I set those goals last year. June was 2 weekends in a row of racing with 2 course personal best and 2 third place finishes. I think I had a pretty great start to the 2022 triathlon race season. This is an update on where we are with preparation for our first 70.3 distance triathlon, which is about 10 weeks away right now, and a recap of my second race of the season. Our second race of the season was the Seaside Sprint Triathlon in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The course is about a half-mile swim, although from our watches and speaking with some of the other athletes, it always measures longer than that. A 10-mile closed loop bike course and a 3.1-mile run. Takes place in Bridgeport, in a park in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and is about as flat of a race as you can get, which means it's a very quick race. It's the best kind of proxy I'll have to the course that we'll be doing for our 70.3 race in September. Weather-wise, it was a chilly one again. So the low was maybe in the low 60s when we were getting set up in transition, and we were coming out of a week that was just full of tons and tons of rain. So I spent some extra time making sure I was stretched out really well and got in a short jog to make sure my body was ready to go before going down to our swim warm-up. The cooler temperatures during the week did leave the water feeling pretty cold. So after the prior weekend when we had this gorgeous 70-degree pond or even warmer, the water in the Sound was maybe 60 degrees. And it was low tide on top of it. Luckily, it was a calm day with very little wind, so there weren't really any waves to contend with. It's probably the first time I've been truly grateful that I was wearing a wetsuit for the swim. Usually I hate it. I feel very constricted, but it being so cold, it was necessary. I spent most of my swim warm-up time really just trying to get used to the water temperature, which is something we didn't plan for in advance and have our extra warm stuff for. Additionally, I really don't like swimming in open water. And I've actually spent time and working mentally on getting better about that, especially in lakes. But the ocean, even the Sound, it's a different beast and something that I really don't like doing. The swim start is frustrating when it's low tide. Given the number of shallow sandbars in this area, most of us in our swim group really ran/walked about halfway out to the first buoy, as we were only waist deep in the water at that point. So the tide was just starting to come in when the race got started. So in addition to having all those sandbars, you're swimming out against the current, which makes the swim out a little harder. Mentally, I was pretty frustrated and annoyed because I did feel like my swim was going horrible at that point, which isn't how anyone wants to start a race, and you don't want to start in that kind of negative mental space. But once I got to that first buoy and I turned and I kind of popped my head up and looked around, I did realize I was actually towards the front of my start wave, which is not what I expected. So mentally, that gave me the boost that I needed, especially important since I couldn't feel my feet at that point because of the water temperature. So I was able to hang on and swim with some of the others for a little bit that were faster than me before they pulled away as we got closer to that second turn buoy. Then the swim back to shore at the second buoy when we turned back with the tide coming in made it the fastest part of the swim, and kind of helps, you start mentally preparing there. And less sandbars to walk as the tide was bringing the water level up. So from there, then it's a short jog up to the parking lot where transition is stationed. And after a quick transition, I got out onto the bike. This is one of the fastest bike courses that we race on during the season. It's in total a 2.5 mile closed loop in a park where we go out and back twice. So it's fast, it's flat. There are a few turns where you have to slow down quite a bit because they are hairpin turns. But generally for the rest of it, you can stay on your aero bars for the entire time. So also great practice. And since it's a closed loop, you can also see in a loop, you can kind of see where everyone else is during the race and gauge your pace and how much more you may want to push. So for my case, I did forget my bike computer. I didn't actually know where it was. So I did the whole thing based on feel, which was a different way to race, but really nice at the same time. Had a really, mentally felt pretty good coming out of the water. And so I was just like, it's 10 miles. Let's just see what we can do. So I wasn't worried about blowing up. Did as kind of road feel, and pushed pretty hard, for most of the ride. The legs did start to fatigue at the end there a little bit, but generally felt pretty great. So after another quick transition off the bike and on to the run course, the run course is a very simple out and back, on a sidewalk right next to the beach. So you have great views to look at while you're out there running. One thing I like about the out and back course is you can kind of gauge again where you are because you're passing anyone who might be in front of you on their way back. That said, there's a duathlon with this race as well. So kind of trying to figure out, is that hair wet? Is that hair dry? To see if they were possibly someone I was racing against or not. In my case, I was able to catch up to early on someone in my age group who was ahead of me off the bike on the run and able to pass them, which is always a great motivator, I think, mentally, just to know you've been able to kind of pass that person. And at the 1 mile mark, I kind of looked down at my watch and realized I'd actually gone out a lot faster than I thought I'd be able to, especially because I'd pushed the bike pretty hard. So at about the halfway point, the woman who did end up winning my age group did catch up and pass me. And when she passed me, she really passed me at a pretty quick pace. I knew there was no way I was going to be able to keep up with her, so I just let her go. My second mile ended up being the slowest of the 3 miles, in part because I kind of choked on the water that I took from the aid station, which was my own fault. I know I need to slow down more when I'm trying to take a drink. So I was able to recover from that and pick my speed back up in the last mile or so, and really push hard to that finish line. And it ended up being my best run ever off the bike. It probably helps that, everything is super flat, so you don't get as much wear on your legs because you're not having to push as much power. I didn't, look at my watch a ton on the run. Again, I just tried to do it based on feel and was pleasantly surprised to get my best 5K time ever off of that. So overall, a really great race. And while I know you can't compare races year over year, it's something that I do look at, and in this case, compared to last year, I took about 9.5 minutes off my time from 2021 to the same course this year. Most of that improvement year over year was in the swim, which is one section I would say it's like you can't even come close to comparing year over year. Because, for example, in last year, my watch told me the swim was about 0.8 miles long, and this year it told me it was 0.65. It could have really been different, or this all could be due to tide and placement and buoy placement and things like that. On the bike, I improved by about 2 minutes overall, and my run time is down about 1.5 minutes from last year. As well, I actually had faster transitions in both areas, T1 and T2, this year as well. One thing I do after each race, after I kind of get my results in, is I take that, what I did, where I think I can improve, and I set a goal for what I want to do if I do this race again next year. And when I looked back at what I put down last year, I was actually within about a minute of my goal, which was pretty awesome. So I, feel like I've had a great start to my season, and I definitely can see improvements that I've had based on which I made changes in my training, and think I'm heading in the right direction when we have that 70.3 coming up. So I think, the training's paying off, the strength training especially, and my work on the bike especially as well. So going forward, really going to focus a lot on my nutrition over the next couple months. As we go into longer races, that's a lot more important. We have some Olympics planned in July where I can test out my nutrition plans and timing of eating and things like that and what I'm having. And then I have nationals scheduled for beginning of August, and then 70.3 Atlantic City in September. Thank you everyone for watching. Please subscribe to get notifications when we have additional updates to share. Thanks for watching.